we could go with.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the June 17th, 2013 Stillwater City Council meeting to order. If you'll please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have items A through J on the consent docket. Do any councilors wish to remove any items from the consent docket?
I move approval. Second.
A motion and second on the consent docket. And consent docket is approved 5-0. That takes us down to public or comments on agenda items not scheduled for public hearings, and we do have one request for Nettie Vick. Yes, ma'am.
What it is the streets of Stillwater. Okay? How do you see it? A lot of it is so messed up, so bad, and it's too hard for a person to walk or ride a scooter. The old roads that was in Stillwater had a little big hump on it, in the road. Those sidewalks need to be flattened out better to where it's easy, because whenever I ride my scooter, and sometimes a lot of us, it's over 100 of some of us, nowadays, riding scooters all over town, and people don't want to respect us. You know, not like we don't want to ride them, but that's the way we get. Instead of paying the price of the taxi service. Whenever we have to go somewhere there and back, it probably costs us $10 to $14 just to be able to do it. Okay, and then the road over there going towards Walgreens, and the ones coming over here by you guys, is some of the worst streets I ever seen in my life. And the ones over there by Salvation Army, like the old days, I'd rather have them roads than to have the roads and the sidewalks the way we got them now. And they hurt, like I said, they go boom, boom, boom down, and everything. I think they need to be smoothed out a lot more. They have fixed some of them, but they got this little zoom where you have to click, click, click like that. I don't know who come up with that idea. They might say it's safe, different problems like that, but they should put it to where we can go straight a lot more than up and down, up and down, up and down. And at the same time, you do run the motors of our vehicles down, just like if you was driving a car and you put it too slow, it's the same in the same direction. So, and when we go over here by my brain forgot. But if you go to all the corners, downtown Stillwater, where you have to travel, that's the main part. It is hard, 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 hard to travel. And the cars don't have no respect for us. One person died about a month ago, and I still say that was part of that death. But that's just my opinion, because the light is on. It said go straight and we can go too. And then somebody, you know how they like to steal a light? And if a light's there, they still won't steal the lights. So the sign downtown Stillwater, that sign is real nice. It just needs to be, it needs to be tall instead of down low, where they can actually see the circle and tell them stop. Because if I was a good person, like I tell them, go ahead and go, I probably would have got 9,000 times, just like all the other scooters in Stillwater. If I say too much, when they go across that road on that new area down there by Walgreens, that hump is still in fixed to where we can go across. We got to zoom. So, I'll leave it alone and I keep listening.
Thank you for your input on the streets and the sidewalks.
Okay.
That's going to take us down to public hearings. And our first public hearing is to get input regarding map amendment rezoning for 498 South Mockingbird Lane. Or South Mockingbird Lane, yeah.
Good evening, Patty Evans, Development Services. This item is a map amendment for property addressed as 498 South Mockingbird Lane. The property is currently zoned RSS, small lot, single family. The adjoining properties to the north are also RSS. The zoning on the east is RSS PUD. That's this area that is hatched over on this area. The south is CG, Commercial General, and the west is zoned RTM, two-family and multifamily. The property consists of two parcels. The request in zoning for the north parcel, shown with just the one crosshatch here, is RT, two-family or duplex, and the southern and this portion will have to be platted as the zoning district only allows one dwelling unit per lot. The requested zoning for the south property is RTM, two-family and multifamily, and that zoning district has a density up to 20 dwelling units per acre, and that's shown in the double crosshatch. The aerial view shows that the property is vacant, as is the property on the south. The uses on the west are duplexes and a mobile home park, and the north is single-family dwellings, and on the east are single-family dwellings and townhomes. Findings include the proposed RTM zoning appears to be consistent with the C3 plan. The property is located adjacent to commercial and multifamily zoning. The RT zoning would act as a buffer to the existing single-family uses. Are there any questions?
Questions, staff?
Not this time, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, do we have good notice?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Okay, we will open up our public hearing. We do have one request from Kelly Harris.
Good evening, Kelly Harris with Keystone Engineering, located at 923 South Flowery, here representing the owner and the developer tonight. The developer is here also if you have any questions for him as well. The property is currently has split up into two legal descriptions. That bold line that we're requesting, the two different zoning districts, it's actually already split into two legal descriptions, and it is our design to keep it that way as well. The north, again, would be RT, and then the southern tract would be RTM, which is the next step up in zoning. We are looking to use the south property use as multifamily up to the 20 units per acre, which is allowed by right if it's rezoned. We did have a volunteer neighborhood meeting on May 2nd, and we explained what the process is, but that we were going after straight rezoning, so that even though we were showing them a potential layout for that development on the south half, that any of the uses that are allowed in RTM or RTM would be allowed to be built there. The main concern of the night was screening to the property to the west here. There are some two-story duplex structures there. That was the main concern. Screening isn't required by right between residential to residential, but that's something that we'll take into consideration during the design. We would propose to use both of these tracts of land by right, not asking for any variances or overlays are expected in the future here. Have any questions?
questions?
Not at this time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We do not have any other requests to speak, so we will close the public hearing and ask staff to come back up with Planning Commission's recommendation.
At its regular meeting on June 4th, 2013, the Planning Commission voted 6-0 to accept staff findings and recommend that the City Council approve the map amendment as presented. Any questions?
Do I have questions? I do have one question. Could you flip back to the map?
Yes.
I'm sorry, the aerial.
The aerial, okay.
Okay, on the northeast corner, that,
Those right there?
yes. Did you say those were townhomes?
Yes.
Okay.
These are
Looks like
still undeveloped, but this is, you can
Looks
see
like a
that-
fourplex. When I
Well,
drove
these-
out there, it looked like, are there 4 units that are contiguous?
Yes, that's what a townhome is, but they've got one townhome on each lot. As you can see, they're platted.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a motion on this application?
I would move approval. Second.
Motion is second to accept Planning Commission recommendation. And that is approved 5-0. Takes us to our second public hearing, input for a map amendment rezoning property at 819 South Perkins Road.
Okay, this map amendment, this is the property that's shown in the crosshatch. It is located on South Perkins Road between 8th and 9th. Here, this is 8th Street, and this is 9th, and this is the property. The property is currently zoned RSS, small lot, single family. The adjoining properties to the north and south are zone CG, commercial general, and the property to the east is zoned public, and to the west is IL, that's the gray, that is light industrial. The requested zoning is CG, commercial general. This is the aerial view. It shows that the property, it's kind of hard to see, but the property is vacant. And as you can see, all but just a small portion along the front is in the floodplain. Findings include the proposed CG zoning appears to be consistent with the C3 plan, and the property is located adjacent to commercial zoning, and a portion of the property is located within the floodplain. Are there any questions?
Questions? Thank you.
Does, you have a question? RSS to CG is the natural transition? Or is it?
Well, in this case, it would be a good transition because the properties to the north and the south, both, it's kind of sandwiched in between commercial general. It's on Perkins Road. So as you can see up here, we've got commercial and industrial. It's in a commercial and industrial area. So the RSS is kind of out of place.
And there's not a neighborhood there?
No.
Is the public just to the north, that's the Convenience Collection Center?
Yes. This is
Nelson.
Win Nelson, and the Mexican restaurant is on the south.
I know where's that from. You said Win Nelson. I was like, I know where that's at.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have good notice on this public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll open the public hearing, and we do not have any requests, so we will close the public hearing.
At its regular meeting on June 4th, 2013, the Planning Commission voted 6-0 to accept staff findings and recommend that the City Council approve the map amendment as presented.
Based on Planning Commission's recommendation, I would move approval.
Second?
Motion and a second. And that is approved 5-0. Our third public hearing of the evening is to receive public input regarding a request to close 375 feet of a right-of-way of Henderson Street, 400 South Drury.
Right. Henderson Street is located just off of East 6th Avenue. Here's 6th Avenue down here, and Henderson Street is north and south. The portion that wants to be is in this request is shown here in the crosshatch. The blue area is the location for the new Highlands Elementary School. The portion of Henderson Street requesting to be closed extends into the school property and will not ever be connected to anything else. The aerial view shows that Henderson Street does serve several properties down here on the south end, but the portion of Henderson Street to be closed just touches on the north property line of that northernmost property. Findings include the closing is needed for development of the new Highland Park Elementary School, and the right-of-way dead ends in the school property and is not needed for future connections. Are there any questions?
There's not a road there now.
No, there is not. There's just the right-of-way.
Okay.
All right. Good notice?
Yes, sir.
All right, wonderful. Okay, we'll open up our public hearing. No requests, so we will close our public hearing. Ms. Evans?
Staff recommends that the council approve the request to close 375 feet of the right-of-way at Henderson Street within property addressed as 400 South Drury Lane.
Any questions? Motion on staff's recommendation.
I would move approval. Second.
Motion and second to approve staff recommendation. And that is approved 5-0. Takes us to our last public hearing of the evening. Input for map amendment rezoning property addressed as 919 East 9th Avenue.
Okay, this property shown here in the crosshatch is located on East 9th Avenue right-of-way, but there is no street in this area right along here. It is adjacent to Hoyt Grove Park, that's shown in here in the blue. The property is currently zoned P, public, but this parcel has always been privately owned and has never been a public entity to be zoned public. The zoning map from the 1960s shows the property zoned as floodplain, and the 1985 map shows the zoning as public. So somewhere in between it inadvertently got added to Hoyt Park and thus the public zoning district. The adjoining properties to the north are zoned RSS, small lot single family. To the west and the south is public, and to the east is agriculture. And the owners have requested the zoning of agriculture on this property. The property is vacant, and it does have floodplain on it. And the findings include the proposed agriculture zoning is consistent with the C3 plan, and the property is located adjacent to agricultural, public, and residential zoning. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Do we have good notice for this hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We will open up the public hearing. Guess what? No requests, so we'll close the public hearing. What is the recommendation?
At its regular meeting on June 4th, 2013, the Planning Commission voted 6-0 to accept staff findings and recommend that the City Council approve the map amendment as presented.
Questions or motions?
I move we approve the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. And that is approved 5-0. Okay. That takes us down to general orders. Dr. Peak, giving the presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have before you the FY14 Pavement Management Project recommendation. I basically have 3 requests that we're asking you tonight. One is an approval of the allocation strategy that we've proposed, which is not up yet. Let's see, there we go. Which breaks down the different treatment strategies we have by budget and lane miles for pavement management. The second item is the actual recommended list of streets that this allocation strategy applies to. And then the third thing is designating the remaining neighborhood streets budget from this year to utilize for next year's FY14 pavement management project. So you can see we're asking for $481,000 for preventative maintenance, $1.8 million for rehabilitation, $1.6 million for reconstruction, and $120,000 for deferred maintenance. This gets into about 80 lane miles of streets. To put it in perspective, we have about 440 lane miles total within the city. Just to revisit what we talked about back in March, why are we moving from just a single project recommendation to a more comprehensive strategy? It's basically maintaining our asset and allocating those dollars effectively for the right treatment at the right time. Example I've given out in public and talking to some of you, it's like maintaining cars. If we had a fleet of cars and they were all brand new, we're just looking at oil changes. But we've got a fleet of cars that range from brand new all the way down to maybe some Model A's and Model T's that are in need of replacement and reconstruction. So we've got a diversity there. It's less costly to do the preventative maintenance. And if we apply this correctly, you can see with timely dollars, the right time and the right strategy, we're extending that life of our pavement and getting good quality use out of our streets as opposed to being in a reconstruction framework. So preventative maintenance, what are we talking about here? We're talking about slurry seals, microsurfacing, crack seals. These don't add a structural value to the pavement, but they basically seal and extend the life of our pavement. An example that we have in this year's project, Richmond Road, basically west of Washington. This is a street photograph. You can see that there is some cracking present in the street. It's an asphalt roadway that's starting to gray, or what we call oxidize. It means it's losing its flexibility of pavement, becoming more brittle, and over time that will break apart. So this would be something we'd apply a crack seal and maybe a slurry seal at a low cost to extend the life of that pavement. Rehabilitation is definitely more cost-intensive strategy. That's where we mill and grind up existing asphalt pavement and replace it with a new surface. Or on a concrete street, we may be replacing several concrete panels. An example that we have from this year's project, this is 19th Avenue between Western and Walnut, just north of the wetlands area that's out there. You can see in the lower portion of the pavement, it's starting to develop some fatigue cracking in the surface, but overall, from a structural condition, this pavement's in pretty good shape, meaning that we would probably mill and overlay that. Reconstruction, of course, this is the more cost-intensive strategy. This is basically where we're replacing that existing pavement. Like we've talked about, we're not adding capacity for traffic or other modes of transportation. We're just replacing from edge of pavement to edge of pavement that surface. And a couple that we have recommended in this year's project, this is Walnut Street from 19th down to 26th. You can see there's extensive what we call alligator cracking throughout that asphalt street, as well as there's some potholes and rutting going on. And another example, this is Monroe Street from 6th Avenue down to 9th Avenue, that basically so many of the concrete panels have failed and cracked significantly. Our only cost-effective repair strategies to go in there and replace the road. And then we have another repair strategy, what we call repair deferred maintenance. These are streets that are in need of reconstruction, but we're going to need to spend some money. We don't have all the money in the world to reconstruct every street in town, but we need to do some targeted repairs. So you can see this is a small area that we'd go in and do repairs, but we may do that at several locations along that street. One example of that would be Sanger Road, basically between 6th Avenue down to 19th. We have several sections of that road that are in a failed condition. It's identified in our step for ultimate widening and replacement, but it's at a time where we need to do some strategic maintenance on it now.
Jason,
Yes, sir.
on that Monroe stretch of road you're talking about, that's needed work for several years. It's just awful. And I agree that it needs replacement, but I don't think there's alleys behind those residences, so how are you going to do that section of road and people still have access to
Sure.
the
The
property?
construction phasing is
Curious.
always difficult. There's a number of different ways we can do it. That one will probably be similar to Third and Doty, where we will at some point physically have to restrict access to those properties and work with those residents to maybe park a little ways from their home and walk to their home. If we have a concrete street is the selected alternative for replacing it, we have to allow for that cure time.
Right.
And it's a coordination effort. We typically work with the residents to give them proper notice and do it, but when we're in that narrow corridor, we don't really have a lot of options to build half of the roadway and allow traffic on the other. So we kind of go block by block in the paving sequence to allow that to happen.
That thing's failed just every way it could fail. and
Yes, sir.
It needs to be repaired.
So the last slide I have for you is just the map, just to kind of give you a semblance of where we are within the city. And you can see we're pretty much in most of the areas except within the central core. And one of the reasons for that, we talked about our pavement management system is based on that rating. We look at that overall condition of the road as our first cut. Then our next analysis is saying, okay, what type of strategies needed here? Preventative maintenance, rehab, reconstruction, and tie that to the budget available. And then we also look what other projects are going on within the city. Does water department have water lines proposed to be replaced on these streets, or sewer line upgrades? And we look at that over kind of the next 3-year cycle. Where will they be working? And so that's why there are streets within the central core that were on our list, but basically we've put off because water is currently developing projects to replace water lines, sewer facilities in those areas. We may do some preventative maintenance on some of those streets, but the rehab and reconstruction would need to be deferred until that work's completed.
Was that chart in our packet? I don't remember seeing.
No, sir, I didn't include it because it's just, if we put it on 8.5 by 11 sheet, it wouldn't be very readable, but we definitely can provide that to you.
I'd like to look at that if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we could
Just
probably,
for information.
Sure.
probably print it out in 11 by 17 or something.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to see that one, just so I can know what streets we're working on.
And so just to kind of conclude my presentation, one of the things in the report that I wanted to point out and why we're asking for this type of strategy as opposed to a project-by-project basis is you look at the lane miles total and you look at the percentages we put on there. I mean, for 12% of the dollars we're asking, we're hitting 67 lane miles of pavement. It's that small rate of return that's basically going to extend and start to bring our streets up to a better condition throughout the pavement system. And so you can see as we get into the more costly strategies, we're spending 40% of our budget, but we're only covering 2% of the total lane miles of streets in this year's project. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Dr. Peak?
So are we looking for approval from the council to?
Would you run through the three
Sure, the three
questions you got
things
for us again?
we're asking is basically for approval of the allocation strategy, basically how we've got those budget amounts broke out by the treatment strategies. We're asking for approval of the recommended list of streets and then designating the remaining funds from this year's Neighborhood Streets project to be carried forward and used towards the FY14 pavement management project.
Makes sense.
You could probably do that in 2 motions. Don't know if you can do it in one. The third item, applying
Probably
the
carry
remaining funds from this year to that, I think maybe should be a separate motion. But I think the first, approving this allocation with this list of streets, you could do in one motion if you'd like.
Well, I'm not arguing just for the sake of arguing, but I think the idea is to have a comprehensive plan, and I like the ratios, and we talked about that in the study session, and get out of the council actually approving a set of streets. So why would we approve a set of streets?
Because you have the option to do so. And
And virtue of the fact that I haven't seen the map that has all the streets on there, if I wanted to approve it, but I personally don't feel the need. I like approving item A and turning them loose to go work on it. Letting them trust the pavement management system to make the appropriate repairs.
Well, I think this is, and Jason, if you don't mind, I'll take a little of the fault on this. Not fault, but I think the pavement management system has come to a point of refinement, and with the communication that Dr. Peak has provided to council, I think there's an entirely different level of understanding our street needs and where we're going, and I tend to agree with you. In the past, when some of that information was still a little sketchy, we would often get into debates of this street or that street, and
I think
I'm not sure that we always got the right streets that way. No, nothing intended, but it was difficult. But I think we have enough tools at hand and enough trust in the tools that approving the allocation and proceeding is probably.
We have our plan and we have our scoring system. We're trying to make our money go as far as we can on the most lane miles as we can. I mean, it makes sense that we have a decent plan.
One thing I do like about the list of, the concept of providing the list of the proposed streets with the type of action to be proposed, I like that being presented to us so that we can actually see. I mean, we've been talking about this for several months, and tonight when you showed the map and, you know, over the last week when I was going through your list, I was able to really pick out, well, this is all over town. I know what street that is, and I can see why that's on the reconstruction list, as opposed to, I know where that one is, and I can see why it's just a mill and overlay.
So we given a list of streets and I've just missed it?
it's at the back of the council report.
Okay.
So I liked getting that list, not so much from, I didn't view that list as a, you know, I think we ought to be doing a different street. I liked it as the representation of what rehabilitation means.
So if we vote for the list, are we locking you down to these set of streets?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we will build the program on, yes, sir, is
I
this.
think, Jason, if you see something
That's a
during the
good
year
point.
that would create a variance, we'd come back to the council.
You know, I mean, the one thing, we are building this on program estimates. You know, we're actually, there's 5 separate contracts that we anticipate bidding as part of this, and so based
Well,
on
and you'll
this.
be bidding all over town and in all sorts of locations, and there will be variance, and I don't want you to have to come back to us, you know, to pick another street when you know which street to go repair, but, I mean, that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, if you're willing to give us that flexibility, I mean, we will work towards this list, but if things or circumstances change that we need to do some fine tuning, we can let you know that when we bring back the contract awards that, hey, based on the bids received, this is what we're able to accomplish. Maybe it's more, maybe it's
Well, see, I
less.
don't want to approve a list and the constituents see that road not get repaired.
Right. I
And
understand.
they come to me and say, look, you approved that we do this little piece of road. Why didn't you see to it that they did it? See what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And on the flip side of that, what I like about this list is it does give us some tangible, how are you doing?
Yes.
And to
That's why I
flip it
wanted the map.
around. What is, and I don't know who I need to be asking, what is the proper way to give the flexibility if needed, but still have the accountability of this is what we think we can do?
Well, I think the only absolutely necessary action, in my opinion, at this point, is the allocation of the remaining funds from this year into the total appropriations for the coming year.
Item 1.
Now, that's really all you need. The rest is pretty much informative. And I think the allocations and the list of streets are kind of intertwined because the allocations are based on what these
Yes,
streets
sir.
need. And as Jason said, each contract comes back for approval, and in that development and design project, if there are any tweaks will be reported. So I think you could look at the list, and the allocation is the staff's recommendation. That's our intended goal. If you appropriate these other funds, that's the path that he will be on, and what you will see in contracts will reflect that. I don't believe that would require an action, unless you would just like to bless that report. Would that be correct, Mr. I mean, as far as a legal standpoint, we do
No,
need to.
I agree with
allocate
what
the funds.
Mr. Galloway said. I think that's right. If you just need to approve the allocation, and the contracts will come back as they're ready, and as long as you approve the contracts, you're good to go.
When you say approve the allocation, you talking item 1 or 3?
Item 1.
Okay, what about the carry forward?
Separate item, I think.
That would be separate.
But that still needs to be approved.
Yes, sir, it does.
And if the other counselors want to approve the list, I understand, I get that, but I think the direction we're trying to head is turn it over to a pavement management system and let's get as many miles repaired as we can, without us being in the, picking this street over that street.
Yeah, with the adoption of the budget, you already appropriated the money for this, all except that carry forward.
Yeah.
So that's been done.
And I do appreciate those percentages, that breakdown. That's really going to hit a lot of lane miles, and I think the community will see a lot of good repairs taking place all over town.
Yes.
And the breakdown of, we're spending 12% of the money to accomplish 85% of the lane miles, and it's that 12% on the preventive maintenance, as opposed to if we don't do that, then we start looking at 40% of the money to accomplish 2% as opposed to 85%.
That's right.
I love that. I mean, not a big spreadsheet guy, but that really
Sure, we try
tells the
to
facts right there.
keep it straightforward.
And I think the public would be happy to be updated as you make these improvements and accomplishments.
Yes, ma'am.
To let the public know, because this is a big deal. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I would move approval of the first item on the list.
I would second.
Motion is second for the first requested approval. Is that the right way to say that?
They seem to be getting it.
Okay, there are 2 other requests from staff.
And I would move approval of the third item, to move the carry forward into the budget as well.
And I would second that.
Get after it.
Counselor Weaver, from your statements, I'm interpreting that to mean that this list of streets, while it's not
Information.
approved, is great information, and
Exactly.
that's what I'm going to be looking at to checking off the list.
And I still want that map.
I still want them back.
I'll get it for you, we'll get it printed out, but we'll also provide it in electronic form to you, that way you can expand it with the sections.
Make our check marks.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, takes us down to ordinances, and we have on first reading ordinance 3232. Mr. Dorman?
An ordinance closing a portion of right-of-way of Henderson Street at property addressed as 400 South Drury Lane.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second on ordinance 3232. It passes 5-0, and then we have second reading ordinance 3231.
An ordinance rezoning attractive land located at 1000 East Virginia Avenue from RSS Small Lot Single Family Residential District to RT Residential Two Family District.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second, second reading 3231. And that passes 5-0. Next is down to reports. Mr. Dorman.
Request an executive session pursuant to 25 OS subsection 307B2 to discuss labor negotiations with Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 102. Request an executive session pursuant to 25 OS subsection 307B1 for the purpose of confidential communication regarding the employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, disciplining, or resignation of City Manager Dan Galloway, City Attorney John Dorman, and Municipal Judge Tanya Ron. That's all I have tonight, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Galloway.
Would like to just clarify one thing for the public, the reporters probably picked this up, and maybe they did. On the consent docket tonight, we learned very shortly before the meeting today that Aspen Heights did not have all of the signatures on the documents for items E and F on the consent docket. I advised the council members that those two items should be off the consent docket. They'll be on July 1. Council members knew that, and I understand the vote was to approve everything on the consent docket except E and F, because those were removed and moved to July 1.
Yeah.
So
That's my mistake for forgetting to scratch it off.
I wanted to make sure
apologize.
everybody understood that. Those two items were not approved tonight. They weren't on the, I think that's correct.
That's correct.
I mean, I know the word, so I just wanted to advise that those will be on July 1st. That's all I have.
Okay. Any miscellaneous items from counselors? Okay. Anything for upcoming meetings? Okay. We will recess city council and we will call utility authorities to order. And on Stillwater Utility Authority, we have on the consent docket items A through H. Did I forget anything on that one?
No,
It's all on there, A
those are-
through
Those
H?
are all active.
Okay. Consent docket A through H.
Anybody
Anybody?
I'd move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent docket. And that passes 5-0. Is there a motion to adjourn utility authority?
So moved.
Second.
Who hadn't voted? Okay, it passes 5-0. Utility authority is adjourned. Reconvene city council. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
Move into executive session?
Second.
Motion and a second. And that passes 5-0. All right.